Such a beautiful introduction. I paid them to say all that stuff. Well, if you didn't know what a dominatrix was, you will now, hopefully, after this reading. I'm going to read about some of my favorite clients from the book. You never knew what to expect on the out calls. One of my first ones was way out in the suburbs of Virginia. I arrived at a small townhouse and a short, well-dressed Latino man who looked strangely feminine opened the door. He invited me in broken English. Now I could see he was wearing a light pink lip gloss and false eyelashes. I told him I'd be in the bathroom changing and ordered him to strip and wait on his knees, just as Miranda taught me, and as I did with all my clients. He just stared at me, standing in the middle of a plush white square of carpet, surrounded by shelves of books and those enviable knickknacks of the well-traveled. Didn't you hear me? I said, strip and get on your knees. I knew Tony, my bodyguard, was listening at the door for the first few minutes just to be sure everything went okay. If this jerk tried anything funny, his door would be knocked down in 2 seconds flat. Please, madam, I don't want to do that. I don't care what you want. I'm the dominatrix, and you'll do as I say. I was on my period, and believe me, there's nothing scarier than a dominatrix with cramps. I must have sounded especially evil. Tears formed in his eyes. What's wrong? I softened my tone. I didn't think he was dangerous anymore. Hopefully Tony got the same feeling. I just want to talk and be with you. The man offered me a seat on the couch. May I take off my shirt? He asked timidly. Go ahead. He unbuttoned his white shirt to reveal a white corset that looked like it'd seen better days, and even then it was probably still ugly. He stared at me as if to ask, is this okay? I nodded. He unbuttoned his pants. He had on the biggest grandma-looking underwear I'd ever seen. He looked down, ashamed. Does this offend you, mistress? No. Why would it? He walks over to me and asks permission to lie on the couch, his head face up in my lap. I grant it, and we talk this way for the next 2 hours. I decide to test my third-year Spanish skills, and he is thrilled with my clumsy efforts. Dígame en español, I tell him. He says he's a surgeon, originally from Argentina. His wife knows about his love for women's clothing, but doesn't wish to see it. He speaks too quickly, and I tell him to slow it down, laughing to myself as I wonder why we've never learned vocabulary like cross-dresser, submissive, or you need to get some better underwear in class. Whatever would Professora Maria Elena think of how I'm implementing her lessons? I stroke his hair and tell him of the other men I've met like him, and he can't believe it. You mean there are others? The 50-year-old becomes a child, his brown eyes big with joy and wonder. Of course. I told him about the special closet at Miranda's dungeon, filled with furs, silky dresses, nighties, shoes, and wigs for our cross-dressers. He was in complete shock. I come from a country where it's very important to be macho. To be like me is a disgrace. You're not a disgrace. You're just you, I tell him. It sounds weak when I say it, but it seems to satisfy him. How sad, I thought, to not be able to be yourself with your lover. I wonder if his visit with me made him feel better or worse. Better for finding someone who understands, or worse and frustrated for doing this behind his wife's back, suppressing his urges around her. Maybe it's no worse than some of my friends not knowing the real me and what I've done in the past. People can be judgmental, so we have to keep our secrets. We said pleasant goodbyes, and he told me he'd call the agency when he needed to talk again. The day was a lesson to me. Every session was different because every person was different. You're the dominatrix, and you can do whatever you want. Miranda's words echoed in my head. True, but I could not continue to go through the motions of spanking and giving orders in the same way to every client. I had to pay attention and tailor each session to fit the person I was with. I had to get creative. Just like with school and life in general, I wanted to push myself to do the best I could. A quarter of all calls were out calls. They opened up worlds I'd never seen up close. I was going to the finest hotels in Washington, marble staircases, glass elevators. If I'd had a particularly hectic day and no time to eat a decent meal, I'd have the guys order room service for me in time for our session. Shrimp, cheesecake, salad. It was the first time I could look at expensive menus and order exactly what I wanted with no thought of price. In true white trash fashion, I even ordered extra appetizers and desserts, food I knew I couldn't finish, and took it home with me for the next day. The client never seemed to care. Half the time it was on his company's credit card anyway. I also got to explore some of the nicest homes, houses you'd see in magazines. I'd never been so close to such extreme wealth. Many rich older people lived alone in huge mansions with their pets as their only company. They just indulged their fantasies once in a while by paying someone like me. It was always riskier going to someone's house. I mean, who knew what they had planned? But I had Tony as backup. Plus, I liked meeting them in their own surroundings, studying their books, pianos, closets, medicine cabinets. Oh, the medicine cabinets. I never realized what a medicated society we lived in until I started this form of snooping. Anal itch cream, antifungal ointment, flush-free niacin. What is that stuff? Anyway, I think most were just plain lonely, maybe even bored with life. I showed up at one guy's house on a beautiful summer afternoon. I don't know if he even knew what a dominatrix was or what, but he seemed extremely happy to see me. He introduced himself as Norman, welcomed me in, and asked me to please have a seat on the couch. He fixed me a glass of ice water at my request, then sat down and put his face in his hands. "You don't have to get undressed or anything. I don't know why I called you people," he said. "I wouldn't be getting undressed anyway," I tried to explain to him. "I'm here to..." All of a sudden he was crying, big tears rolling down from his eyes over his thin, aging hands. "My wife died 12 years ago," he sobbed, "and I haven't been this close to a woman since." His chest heaved. He was crying so hard by this time. I was completely stunned. I hadn't prepared for this. He went on. "I don't know why I called. I just wanted to talk to somebody, a woman." I thought maybe he thought I was a prostitute, so I clarified that he was not going to have sex with me. He sobbed harder. It wasn't what he wanted anyway. He really just wanted to talk. When I finally believed him, I put my hand on his back and smoothed over it back and forth like my mom used to for me. His frail body shivered under the thin checkered shirt's cloth. He composed himself and stopped sobbing eventually, and then told me he was from Seattle, but his daughter was attending school in D.C. When his wife died, his life ended. He was completely lost without her. He retired a year ago and moved to D.C. to be closer to his daughter. He was battling depression and wanted to try just about anything to get his life moving again. He told me he tried dating twice, but both times he felt so guilty about it. His wife was the love of his life, and he didn't want anyone else. I had no psychiatric background, and being so young, I had no experience with what he was going through. But I knew he had passion for this woman he shared his life with, and I was touched. I know I probably should have told him she'd want him to get on with his life and all those other things you're supposed to say, but to this day, I know when I die, I want someone to have loved me like that. I didn't know what to tell him, so I asked him questions about her, her likes and dislikes. I noticed a few antique cameras on display in a glass cabinet and told him I was studying photography. He was so happy to take the cameras out and show me that they still worked. He pulled out photos of his wife and daughter, and I was sincere when I commented on how beautiful they both were. Our time ran over and my pager beeped. That's very dated. You know the era this was written in. It was Miranda calling to ask me if I was staying for another hour or what. If so, I'd have to charge him. I told him I had to go, and he happily paid the $100 for an extra half hour. I couldn't believe this man was paying just for my company. Thoreau was right. The massive men do lead lives of quiet desperation. Thank you. I'm going to read one other little section, just so I don't leave you on a sad note, about another favorite regular that I dubbed Fart Man. One regular wanted me to fart in his face. No, wait, not in his face, on his face. All while wearing old-fashioned panties, stockings, and a mid-calf-length skirt, which he provided with tags still on them. Once a week, I'd walk up to his tiny third-floor room. I have no idea how he explained my visits to his roommates. There were yellow nicotine stains around sad clown paintings that hung on his walls. The place reeked of cigarettes and alcohol, and he offered me some every week, looking at me quizzically each time I declined. I'd take the clothes from the hangers, go to the bathroom to change, then return to reenact the scenario he painstakingly explained to me on my first night there. While he laid his tiny 5'4" frame on the floor, completely clothed, I was to pace back and forth, carefully stepping over his body and face, then reprimand him for trying to peek up my skirt. After exactly 20 minutes, he timed it, we moved to the bed, where he'd lie with a pillow placed above his head for my knees. Then I'd sit facing the wall away from him and plant my butt right on his face. There he waited for me to fart as many times as possible until our hour was up. At first I thought this scenario was some kind of joke. Like, let's see what I can get her to do. But after a few weeks, I can honestly say this man thoroughly enjoyed it. I questioned him incessantly about what he was getting out of our meetings, but got no real answers. Maybe he didn't even know himself. He was an ex-Navy guy who scraped to pay for these weekly encounters, not to mention all the new underwear. Sometimes he even called the agency twice a week if he had a little extra spending money. I wasn't always able to perform. Taco Bell bean burrito or not, sometimes you just couldn't predict these things. I became bored with his unwillingness to deviate from the script whatsoever, so I gave my fart man to Alicia as her first regular. Besides, she had chronic gas, so she could probably fulfill his needs better anyway. He certainly wasn't fulfilling mine. And then, I heard from Fart Man about a year after the book came out. When you write a memoir, you just never know how people are going to react. The people that you think that you did great justice get mad, and the people you think will be mad are really happy to be remembered. And I got this email. The subject line is page 99. It's like, oh God. Okay. Hi there. My name is George, and I was honored that you would remember me and my fetish. You described it so eloquently on page 99. You see, I'm the person you wrote about. I met you through Lady Lily in Washington, D.C., and was a frequent customer of Veronica, not her real name. I think it was Diane or Denise or Donna. In fact, I still have your old name, Alexis, and cell phone number. I keep them all for nostalgic reasons. The fetish is alive and well. The only difference is now I have a smother box. Something every dom should have. Check it out, www.smothered.com. You don't know how much I appreciated you when you remembered my little gig and wrote about it in a book. I found out about it from Lady Lily, the dom who told me about you and Veronica. Do you stay in touch with Veronica? It would be kind of fun if I saw her again. She saw me for a long time, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. She was a real pro and performed my gig perfectly. You did a pretty good job yourself. If you ever come back to visit or whatever, I hope you look me up. I use the smother box instead of the pillows, and all the girls that do this for me are so thankful. It's a lot more comfortable for them and for me too, actually. Please stay in touch, and I'm going to send the book for a personalized autograph, okay? Thank you.